During a special address to Congress, Abraham Lincoln defined sovereignty as a political community that does not have a political superior. The United States of America is just such a community. Former President Reagan, once again, he reaffirmed our commitment to national sovereignty when he refused to sign the Law of the Sea Treaty. Tonight, we're here together because we don't take national sovereignty for granted. We support American self-governance, and we support constitutional law over global governance and transnational law, unlike some people that Barack Obama wants to put into positions of authority. Spanning a breadth of issues from national security to environmental protocols to global financial regulation, the Congressional Sovereignty Caucus will be a one-stop shop for House Caucus members on all matters relating to sovereignty. How many members do we have right now, Christine, signed up? Okay, we're up to 31 right now, and we're actually really just getting started. We have the support of professional and dedicated outside organizations such as the Heritage Foundation, Freedom Alliance, and the Center for Security Policy. And let's give them a hand also. And they have hosted these great refreshments that we have tonight. They've also given invaluable intellectual support and stimulation to get this going as well. With their help, we will offer action items such as providing scrutiny of pending treaties that would require implementing legislation in the House, make statements on the floor of the House, sending letters to administration officials, senators, committee chairmen, and other members of the House, and submitting press releases, publishing editorials, and basically just informing the American people of what's going on. We have already taken action by submitting a letter to each senator urging them to oppose the nomination of Harold Koh. And if you don't know who he is, come and talk to me and I'll fill you in. That nomination, by the way, was only narrowly sustained on a cloture vote in the Senate today by a vote of 65 to 31. We will fight the good fight so that when we get back to our districts, we can truly say we are keeping government accountable and answerable to the American people, not to encroaching international organizations and courts. A dedication to national sovereignty is not some notion out of the past. It is more vital than ever. We have a few champions of national sovereignty with us tonight, and they will share their stories and offer their own pearls of wisdom on how we can protect the sovereignty of the United States and preserve the American people's right of self-determination. I'm going to introduce several of them in just a moment, but first I would like to have my originator of the House Sovereignty Caucus, representative from Detroit, Thad McCotter, come up and give us his views on this, his perspective on sovereignty. And Thad is a great American. He's a strong conservative. He's eloquent in his defense of the principles that our country has to live by. So Thad, come up and say hello.
The American people, at their founding, were subordinated beneath the sovereignty of a tyrannical king. The revolution was about placing the people on top of their subservient government. They established it to protect their God-given rights. It is this sovereignty that this caucus has come together to preserve and to promote. Too often these days we see elitists who believe they know better than the American people. Most of them, as Doug pointed out, one in particular, that believes that international organizations unaccountable to the sovereign American citizens are the wave of the future. We would argue that this is nothing more than a regressive attempt to return Americans to their status as subjects rather than to continue their status as sovereigns. This is why this caucus is formed. There are those who wonder what we can do. That is not what I wonder. What I wonder is how there are so many who can do nothing. That is the true question facing them. Anytime we raise our voice on behalf of our employers, the sovereigns of our district, as their representatives, we are doing our job on their behalf to protect and defend their interests and their God-given liberty and their entitlement to be sovereigns within this country. This is also a lesson that is not lost upon American foreign policy. We are all aware of what happened to Neda, shot dead in the streets of Tehran for demanding her right to exercise her God-given liberty. We have seen the President of the United States echo the words of Communist China and Putin's Russia that the fight for freedom in Iran is a matter for the sovereign Iranian people and their government. It is an internal matter. I simply point out to the President of the United States and those who believe that the fight for liberty in the streets of Tehran does not affect the fight for freedom and security in the United States that they are wrong. The sovereignty of the Iranian people resides in their hearts and souls. It does not reside in a murderous mullah-led regime, the brutality of which we have not seen since Tiananmen Square. This is why this caucus was formed, to fight for the sovereignty of the American people, the sovereignty of all those who yearn to breathe free throughout our tortured, troubled world. And in doing that, we will do everything we can and honor the trust that the people placed in us, their servants. Thank you so much for being here. God bless you.
Representative Scott Garrett of New Jersey is on his way. He's the other co-founder, and we'll hopefully be hearing from him shortly. Let me introduce now one of our distinguished visitors. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North is a combat-decorated Marine, a #1 best-selling author, and the host of War Stories, the award-winning military documentary series on the Fox News Channel. A graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, he served 22 years as a U.S. Marine. His awards for service in combat include the Silver Star, the Bronze Star for Valor, and 2 Purple Hearts for wounds in combat. Assigned to the National Security Council staff in the Reagan administration, North was the counterterrorism coordinator from '83 to '86. He's the founder of Freedom Alliance, a foundation that works to preserve U.S. sovereignty and security and supports those who are on the front lines defending it, America's soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, and Marines. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Congressman Lamborn. Thank you, Congressman Cotter, for being with us. Senator Jim DeMint, the first senator to join this caucus, was here a few moments ago and had to leave. And I know that Congressman Garrett's on the way down. I want to thank you for taking on a leadership role in this caucus and supporting American sovereignty. My thanks also to Frank Gaffney and the Center for Security Policy and the Heritage Foundation for joining Freedom Alliance in this effort. For more than a year, we have been working to encourage a caucus here on Capitol Hill on this vital issue. Protecting American sovereignty has never been more important than it is today. As has already been mentioned, Harold Koh, the administration's nominee to be the State Department's legal advisor, is committed to what he calls transnationalism, which is, according to him, blending of international and domestic law. According to Mr. Koh, U.S. courts, and I'm quoting now, could and should use their interpretive powers to promote the development of a global legal system. He is committed to promoting obedience, his word, not mine, to international law. And as has been pointed out this afternoon, the Senate voted cloture on his nomination, and barring any last-minute revelations, he will likely be confirmed in the next few days. But Mr. Koh's nomination is just the tip of the iceberg on this issue in this administration. Mr. Obama's nominee to be the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Sonia Sotomayor, has also spoken favorably of foreign laws influencing U.S. legal decisions. The Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, has urged that we, quote, revitalize international institutions and create new global governing institutions. And of course, Senator John Kerry, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has said that U.S. defense policy should pass a global test before being implemented. Some of you may recall that during a recent presidential campaign, then Senator Barack Obama declared in Berlin that he was, quote, a citizen of the world. I am not. I am a citizen of the United States of America. As a young man, I raised my right hand and took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. It happens to be the same oath that every member of Congress takes. It is not the role of our courts or the State Department or any other institution of governance in America to build a global legal system. The only obedience of judges and government officials should be to the Constitution of the United States. America is an exceptional nation. Our laws do not require blending with those of other nations. Our national defense budget is the purview of our elected leaders, not the officials in other countries. Our soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, and Marines who serve in harm's way deserve to be protected from international tribunals. Our Bill of Rights, including our Second Amendment, don't need to be ratified by the United Nations or any other institution outside of the United States. And finally, our president needs to start promoting the unique liberties and exceptional freedoms of our country and stop apologizing for who we are as a people. I will tell you that I am encouraged because this caucus is going to be important as a reminder to the American people in every capacity who serve our country, whether they're elected or appointed, that their oath of office requires that they consider our national sovereignty in all that they do. Thank you for becoming leaders in this very important cause. And thank you for being here tonight.
We have another distinguished visitor. Doug Feith served as Undersecretary of Defense for Policy from July 2001 until August 2005. In that position, he helped devise the U.S. government's strategy for the war on terrorism and contributed to policy for the Afghanistan and Iraq campaigns. Mr. Feith advised President Bush and Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld on the range of national security issues, including the nuclear program of North Korea and Iran, the counterinsurgency in Colombia, and Palestinian-Israeli peace diplomacy. During the Reagan administration, Mr. Feith worked in the White House as a Middle East specialist for the National Security Council and then served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Negotiations Policy. He recently held the position of Professor and Distinguished Practitioner in National Security Policy at Georgetown University and was a Distinguished Visiting Fellow of the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. Currently, he is the Director of the Center for National Security Strategies and Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. I hope that we can get some great remarks from Mr. Feith. Help join me in welcoming him. Also, I hope that he can tell us if he's not too uncomfortable about a recent experience he had with Spanish criminal authorities. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Congressman. I want to join Ollie North in congratulating Congressman Lambourne and Congressman McCotter and Congressman Garrett in taking the leadership on this enormously important issue. I want to start with just a quick story about the hours after the 9/11 attack. I tell the story at some length in my book. I was in Moscow when 9/11 occurred, and on the next morning, on September 12th, I came back to the United States on a KC-135 tanker that the European Command had provided to us. As you remember, the air traffic was shut down over the United States at the time. And on that plane was, at the time, Lieutenant General John Abizaid and two of my colleagues from the policy organization at the Pentagon, Assistant Secretary Peter Rodman and his deputy for the Middle East, Bill Ludy. And we spent about 5 hours standing around in the belly of this plane talking about the danger of follow-on attacks and the effects that a series of attacks would have on our country. And we agreed that the main danger, I mean, over and above the danger to life and property, the main danger was to the free and open nature of our society and to our constitutional system. If there had been a series of 9/11 attacks, what we were worried about was that there would be pressures within our country, inevitably, to change the nature of the country in a way that was adverse to freedom and openness and respect for the Constitution as it's been in place for so long. And we asked ourselves, when we get back to Washington, what are the main things that we should be focused on? What are the main assets of the United States, the main virtues of the United States that are really in danger here if there were to be, as I said, a series of attacks of this kind? And we explicitly discussed our recognition that our most basic duty as U.S. national security officials was to protect the ability of the American people to continue to live as a free, self-governing community under our Constitution. That, as Ollie North pointed out, is what our oath of office committed us to, and we had no obligation that was more basic, nor any that was more elevated, than our role in defending our Constitution and our constitutional system. And I tell you that because there's a lot of misunderstanding in our society about what this issue of sovereignty is. As I understand it, it is an issue of whether the American people have the ability to govern themselves, whether they can exercise the right of self-determination, the right of self-government that was announced in our Declaration of Independence. And I want to make it clear that sovereignty is not about isolation. I don't favor isolationist policies for the United States. It is not about selfishness, and it is not about assertions of U.S. superiority to other nations. It is about self-government, whether the American people can make the rules by which they live and elect their own legislators and executive officials and hold them to account by democratic means. That is really, I believe, what is at risk when people talk about transnational law and transnational institutions and world government type institutions. Fundamentally, the danger is that the American people would lose the ability as a practical matter and as a legal matter to hold to account the people who make their policies and laws. And as Congressman Lamborn pointed out and Congressman McCotter pointed out, I mean, that really is what the American Revolution was fought over. And it's fundamental to our country. It's enormously important. It is the issue that, as the Congressman pointed out, it is the issue that's at stake in various recent actions, including one that I was personally involved in, which is the effort of a Spanish judge to hold to account in Spanish criminal courts officials of the Bush administration who were involved in advising the president on detainee policy for war on terrorism detainees. And I mean, the idea that American officials can be charged with a crime because of the advice that they gave to the president means that those American officials basically report to European judges rather than to the American people. And I mean, aside from my personal problem with this, I mean, I really do think there is a serious national problem with the question of where American officials have to decide who they work for. And if you actually in fact have to report and be held to account by some European judge who asserts authority over American officials, I mean, that really changes the nature of our governmental system in a very profound and a very adverse way. I would also make the point that one way that the Obama administration is operating in international affairs that brings up the sovereignty issue is in the area of arms control, and which is a particular interest of mine. And it is not a sovereignty problem inherently for the United States to be entering into treaties with other countries. It is in fact a sovereign act to be able to enter into treaties. So the fact that we are concerned about sovereignty and want to protect American sovereignty doesn't mean that we automatically oppose treaties. But one of the main problems that we have had, especially with arms control treaties over the last 100 years or so, is that treaties they have the status under American law, the same as a statute. Under our Constitution, statutes and treaties in force are both together the supreme law of the land. Treaties are very often unenforceable. They are violated cynically by countries that we enter into treaty arrangements with, and there are no effective mechanisms for compelling compliance. And where we get into sovereignty issues is when the United States winds up binding itself to these international agreements, and then we find that we effectively remain bound. And it's considered a very serious thing in the United States, as it should be, that we should honor our international obligations, but our partners don't. And we don't have effective means to deal with that. I hope that is something that the Sovereignty Caucus will be focused on and can contribute usefully to. And again, I want to congratulate the leadership that's been shown here by these members of Congress in launching this subject, and I hope that it becomes, that this caucus becomes a vehicle for bringing this matter to the attention of the American people. There are very few things that are more important to educate the American people on than the importance of the right of the American people to govern themselves and to continue to do so. Thank you.
Boy, thanks for those remarks. You know, I am so excited about this caucus because you heard me mention some of the think tanks earlier that are supporting and encouraging us. And some of these individuals who are here tonight, Doug Feith, Frank Gaffney, Colonel North, just the intellectual firepower that these individuals and these organizations bring to us as a caucus really makes me excited and really gives me a lot of hope that we're going to get some things done. Now, I have another of the co-founders of the caucus who's here with us. There are two things about Representative Scott Garrett that really impress me. Number one, he's a strong conservative. In fact, he's in his fourth term in Congress. Through the previous 6 years, he has a 100% lifetime rating from the American Conservative Union. Not 99%, not 98%, 100%. And very few members of Congress do have that 100%. He does. But secondly, he's in a northern New Jersey district that's maybe not the most conservative district in the country, but because liberals have been frustrated because they've tried to take him on and have been unsuccessful in removing him from office. He's popular. He keeps winning re-election because he's not just a conservative, but he's passionate and he can eloquent. He can explain why that just makes sense. And so they've been frustrated, and I hope for many more years they'll continue to be frustrated. Help me welcome Scott Garrett.
I missed that part. Who's frustrated back in my district? The Liberals, yeah. Thank you, and I just want to be brief to say welcome to all of you. This is really a great turnout. You always worry when you have your kickoff, so will anybody be there, just Doug and I and Thad? But thank you all for coming out because this is such an important event and the issue that we're dealing with. Thank you to our honored guest as well for being here. Thank you to the Center for Security Policy, I guess you mentioned these, but the Heritage Foundation and the Freedom Alliance as well for being with us on this very important issue as well. Just very briefly, you know, when you think about this issue and the three players that began sort of rolling this out and thinking about this, you may wonder how this all came about, why we're thinking about it. For me, what is a fundamental aspect of it is the U.S. Constitution. And it comes right down to this. Constitution, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution states, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land. Can it be any simpler than that? I don't think so, but unfortunately the courts of this country seem to make it simple, not as simple, and other people on the other side of the aisle make it less simple. It's clearly the role of Congress then, therefore, to enact the laws and the courts across the street to interpret the laws, and it should end, and it should end at our shores. Sadly, of course, some of our leaders here take a divergent view on this. They fail to recognize the importance of the Constitution. They fail to recognize the sovereignty of this nation. You know, I was just at an event the other day, and maybe somebody else already used this quote, I don't know, but during the speeches the other day, someone made reference to the fact how this administration is saying, and they have it done both on these shores and on shores across the ocean as well, that he is and we are citizens of the world. Of course, the retort to that is no, that we are not citizens of the world. We are not citizens of dictatorships. We are not citizens of North Korea. We are not citizens of Putin's Russia. We are not citizens of Iran. We are not citizens of North Korea, Venezuela. We are citizens of the United States of America. And for that is something we should be proud of. That is something we should be thankful for. And that for something that we should realize that we have been blessed by. When you think about the fact that some 200 plus years ago, some of the brightest minds of the world has ever known came together to craft a document to make this a republic that has withstands the pressures both internally and externally for all these 200 years. We have to thank them, we have to thank our founding fathers, and that we are a unique and blessed nation. At the time when they did that, they may not realize what they were doing as far as what it would lead to, but in justifying the American Revolution, our own Declaration of Independence declared that King George had, quote, combined to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws. Well, that is the exact same thing that someone in the court would like to do right now, to subject us to jurisdictions foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by the people in this country. And I'll just close on this. You know, sometime the folks at home, when they talk about these issues, may not get into the weeds as much as some of us may get into when we talk about the Constitution and the various parts of it. And they may not articulate it in just the same ways that we articulated here, or as our illustrious guests have articulated already. But I think that the American public has a visceral hatred and a dislike to what has occurred in our courts and some of the opinions that are coming out of the courts and out of Washington as well, when they hear that we want to make ourselves once again subjected to foreign powers. Citizens of this of the 5th District of New Jersey did not elect them. They elected me. The 5th District, or the citizens of the United States, did not elect any of those foreign powers. They elected their representatives to represent them, and that's what they want us to do. And that's why we have this Sovereignty Caucus. Again, I thank our guests for being here tonight as well. I thank you all for turning out. For those staffers who are here, who are not here, who are here representing their members, make sure that they go back and express the importance of this caucus, the importance of getting their members to join on with this cause as well. I thank you so very much. God bless.
Not only has Peter been serving many years, since the early 90s in central Michigan, but he's running for governor of Michigan. Help me welcome Peter Hoekstra, ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, formerly chairman of Intelligence.
Thanks. I heard Gaffney's caught in traffic, and so here I am. Thanks a lot. I'm just down here because I heard there was free food, and I heard we were voting late tonight. But you know, I'm fascinated with the whole issue of sovereignty, U.S. sovereignty, state sovereignty, parental sovereignty. I think that this is actually going to be the emerging and the growing political issue, because as you go out to the grassroots level, it is what it fears people the most. Is that they are losing control of their lives. They are seeing them lose control of their education systems in their community to the federal government, and they're afraid that they're going to see us lose control of the United States to international organizations. So I think it is the issue that at all levels is going to start capturing people's attention and start capturing their imagination. Our objective, and our strategy needs to be to capture their imagination in a positive way. Just imagine what would happen if you again had control over these kinds of issues and didn't give and didn't cede this authority to other institutions and to other individuals. It's time to stand up and take and to reclaim our sovereignty. So I applaud the folks here working on this issue, applaud Heritage for getting this done, and you can bet that in about 17 months or 18 months, when we've got a new governor in Michigan, you'll have somebody advocating for shrinking the size of this place here in Washington, except in those places where it has its responsibility in terms of national security. So thanks a lot.
So we're fortunate to have our last distinguished visitor here, and he's going to come up and say a few words. So let me just give a little introduction of Frank Gaffney. Mr. Gaffney founded the Center for Security in 1988. Under his leadership as president, the center has been nationally and internationally recognized for its analyses of foreign and defense policy matters. He is the lead author of War Footing: 10 Steps America Must Take to Prevail in the War for the Free World. He also contributes to the Washington Times as a weekly columnist. He's a regular contributor to many other national publications and is a frequent guest on radio and television news programs throughout the country. Mr. Gaffney served as Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear Forces and Arms Control Policy under Assistant Secretary Richard Pearl, was a professional staff member on the Senate Armed Services Committee, chaired by Senator John Tower of Texas, and started his defense career as a legislative aide to the late Senator Henry Scoop Jackson in the areas of defense and foreign policy. Please help me welcome Mr. Frank Gaffney.
Well, you have no idea how glad I am to be here. If there were any confusion as to what it means when one train lands on top of another for the traffic system of Washington, D.C., I'm living proof that it's a nightmare out there. But thank you for sticking around. Obviously, the advantage of having a reception with food is that people do. But I'm very grateful to see Ollie and Doug and, of course, Congressman Lamborn. I had the privilege earlier this afternoon of taping Congressman McCotter on a program that Congressman Lamborn participated in that we're now doing, if I may put in a little plug, every weeknight, 9 o'clock, WTNT 570 on your AM dial, called Secure Freedom Radio. It's a small thing, Ollie, but we're trying. Anyway, we used it as a vehicle for following up on your early warning that we were getting a sovereignty caucus launched here in the House, and we're able to actually announce that it is happening. So I'm very appreciative of being able to be here for that occasion, albeit a little late. I just want to say that for me, and not knowing what has been said before I arrived, but I'm sure agreeing with all of it, sovereignty is one of those things, like oxygen, that we all take for granted until it's not there. And what's particularly worrying and what makes this caucus so important, it seems to me, is like oxygen, it can be gradually reduced, and the victim may not know until all of a sudden they're not with us anymore, that it's been cut off. And so a caucus in the House of Representatives to advance the ideas that we all hold dear, advance the ideas that are at the very core of our constitutional republic and our sovereignty, is so important. And as I'm sure has been remarked, that we're doing this on the very day that the other body of the Congress has seen fit to clear the way for one of the enemies, in my estimation, I think that's not too charged a word, enemies of sovereignty, to be made the senior lawyer in the Department of State, Harold Koh. So again, just as my little excursion around town over the past hour and a half gives me insights into that particular problem, the importance of a caucus that will help us all focus on the importance of sovereignty and of maintaining its continued availability to all of us couldn't be more important. And the fact that we may now have in the House a vehicle for keeping the so-called upper body more honest about these issues is both very, very necessary and very laudable. So thank you to the members, thank you to my co-guests, and to all of you for the support that I know you'll give to this very worthy and very important initiative. So again, thank you, Congressman.
Thank you so much for working hard to get here. That just shows the passion that you and the others have on this so important issue. Thank you all for being here. Let's just have a good time and visit. And we appreciate your being here.